Hey, what's up, internet people? Welcome back to Knowledge and Resistance. Today, I would like to talk about so-called black on black crime. Now, when I use the word crime, without getting into all the complexities of crime, what crime is, what crime implies, what crime results from, we're just going to use the word crime as it's widely understood to be today. Later on in the future, I'll go more in depth with my beliefs on crime, my analysis on crime. But for right now, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to use we're going to use it in the context that it's widely understood to be in society today. So with that being said, a lot of white people, when they're confronted with Black Lives Matter, the phrase Black Lives Matter, anything surrounding Black Lives Matter, any conversation that ensues from uttering the phrase Black Lives Matter, there are a lot of white people who like to use black on black crime as as an argument against Black Lives Matter. And they do this in order to justify and defend the murder of black people by police. Let me be perfectly clear. This argument is rooted in racism. Black on black crime does not justify or defend the murder of black people by police because black on black crime does not exist. Using the term black on black crime is just a way to alienate black people from the rest of society, to separate them, to make them seem like outsiders, and to suggest that they are inherently violent and that this inherent violence makes them inferior to white people. This is how it is used as racism, and this is why the white people who use it feel comfortable in defending the murder of black people by police. With all that being said, I think it would be incomplete to not look at all of the different dynamics of black on black crime and the way that it's used by different people to justify these murders. So let's just assume, for the sake of this discussion, that black on black crime really does exist. We're going to pretend that it exists. And in this scenario, we're going to see that it is still rooted in racism to use this as a defense, whether it exists or not. And there's a few different reasons. The first is proximity. Poverty and redlining were used and still are used to this day to group black people together in the more impoverished neighborhoods in the US. If you don't know what redlining was/is, is a practice used by financial institutions to deny creditworthy borrowers of loans based on either race or the current neighborhood that they lived in. And what they did, the way that it got its name, was they would take a map and literally draw a red line around the neighborhoods that they would not approve loans for. And if you lived in this neighborhood, whether you qualified or not, even if you did qualify, you were denied a loan. And these neighborhoods were predominantly black neighborhoods because just due to segregation and Jim Crow laws. That's just, how it all kind of developed. And because these neighborhoods were the more impoverished neighborhoods based on things like, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and when we understand that Black Wall Street was not an isolated incident, Black Wall Street happened all over the country. It happened in Jacksonville, Florida. It happened in Charlottesville, South Carolina. It happened in numerous different places. And these were thriving black neighborhoods that were left impoverished due to race riots and white people feeling like their capital was threatened. So this is just another way that capitalism supports racism, or it's another way where racism gets its power from capitalism. With poverty comes crime. Crime becomes necessary for survival when poverty is prevalent. The problem comes later on when this crime that is necessary for survival starts to breed this subculture that goes with it. And this is what white people have in mind when they use or when they reference the term black on black crime. It's this subculture that they have in mind. What they tend to forget, however, or overlook, or just don't care, is that this particular subculture is not only not exclusive to black people, it was created by white people. If we take a look at the mafia, the bootleggers, the rum runners, organized crime, Ponzi schemes, all of these were predominantly white endeavors. And they were all criminal, and they created this criminal subculture that has become so, predominant in the more impoverished areas of the country. So when they talk about black on black crime, if it really did exist, if it really was a thing, it would be based on, or it would be a result of, the accessibility that, one person who wants to do crime has to another person. Because they're all grouped together, they have better access to the person down the street than they do to the person out in the suburbs, right? However, what these white people don't ever talk about is that over 85% of all the crime that is experienced by white people is committed by other white people. That's actually a higher rate than the so-called black on black crime rates. But no one ever talks about that. No one ever uses that as a justification for murdering white people. Now, as if all of this wasn't enough, let's take a look at the logic aspect of it. If a few years ago, when ISIS was beheading people on international news, and it outraged Americans, if we took the logic that these white people use when they talk about black on black crime and why aren't black people protesting that, and they should take care of that before they, start complaining about the cops, that logic suggests that we shouldn't have been upset with ISIS for beheading other Americans, because Americans kill Americans, right? We have mass shootings like once a week? And let's be real, it's always white people who commit these mass shootings. So by the logic that these white people are using, we should not have been complaining or been outraged or have been fighting ISIS until we took care of the mass shootings and all of the killings that happen here in America. Because it's the same logic, it's the same principle. And now you can see how absolutely asinine of a logic that is. So what it really boils down to is that white people are so desperate to be racist that will actually fabricate differences that don't really exist in order to justify our racism. This is not a new phenomenon. This has been happening for centuries. J. Marion Sims, the so-called father of gynecology, he performed experiments on enslaved black women, and he did it without any anesthesia under the pretense that black people don't feel pain as bad as white people. Conversely, there was a term coined in psychology that is a pseudoscience, or pseudopsychology, I should say, called drapetomania. And drapetomania was a label placed on enslaved people who tried to escape, and it was said that they had a mental illness for trying to escape. They considered it a psychological issue or a psychological malfeasance for enslaved black people to try to escape slavery. This has been going on for centuries. When we hear this trash trope that, we can defend the murder of black people by police because of black on black crime, we need to stop taking it at face value. We need to analyze it. We need to compare it against the facts. Just because it strokes our egos and makes us feel superior doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's accurate. It's oftentimes, it's always, I should say, it's always rooted in racism. Black on black crime does not exist. It is just crime. If you like the content, please remember to share, comment, like it, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.